Namaste. Last Wednesday in the evening, Yazdi, Martha, and I were at Ursula's, along with others here in this room. Small group. We were doing our final day of our clay workshop. And I have to pat Yazdi and I ourselves in the back, up front. We were amongst master artists. And Yazdi and I entered that room with the very real fear that we might emerge with 2 ashtrays. After all, that's what I did 3 years ago, the last time I tried it. Martha was doing Buddhas. And she had convinced Yazdi that it would be good for him, blah, 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 blah. In a moment of inspiration or weakness, Yazdi somehow agreed. And Martha, whereupon she informed me that Yazdi was in the next course, and it would only be right if I did so. And as Yazdi said, he would do it if I did, and we went in. And it was wonderful. We both overdid ourselves by letting go, by letting creation take its place. And it was a very fun-filled evening. Everybody was focused on their work. And somehow the topic got around to gelato. Particularly Allegro gelato down here in Campbell. Extraordinary. We've been all over the world. That's number one. Organic, natural. The flavors are extraordinary. And as we were talking about it, Martha said, you know, when somebody passes in our lives, they pass away, they die, we always go there and have gelato, which is true. It's not so much a sadness, it's a sort of a celebration. It's significant, and yet we acknowledge that passing by having ourselves some gelato. And on the way home, we were driving, and Martha said, let's have some gelato tonight. We had some in the refrigerator, all right? We walked in our house, our answering machine. The first message was from a friend of ours, telling us that suddenly his partner had passed away on Sunday from a 2-year bout with cancer. She was strong, she was focused, and it was a losing battle. And he broke down at the end and he said, I'm a wreck. The next message was a friend of ours from San Francisco. Old friends. And she wished to bring us a message that another old friend, we've known each other since the 60s, since those days in the Haight-Ashbury, that he was getting through his 2nd round of chemo. They thought they had caught it the first time. They hadn't. She just wanted us to tell what was going on. When we had our gelato that night, it was a bit different than we expected it to be when we came home. And I know this is the week before Thanksgiving, and I think this is the time we should talk about pain and suffering. I'm going to read 2 poems I wrote in the 1980s, I think that are germane to the topic today. The first one. I have seen the dying live. I have seen the living die. I have heard your unasked questions as to what and where and why. But I cannot tell you that which is not mine to say, for each and every one of you must find yourselves this way. The mystery that you live is there for you to see. Through subterfuge and pretense, you struggle to be free. From the chains of your own making, from the prisons of your thoughts that you find yourself now trapped by, you yourself have caught. Sometimes I know it seems that love is but a lie, that love is but a dream, that only lives to die. But I know it is not so. I know that love is real, but I cannot show it to you. You yourself must heal. I have seen the dying live. I have seen the living die. I have heard your unasked questions as to what and where and why. But I cannot tell you that which is not mine to say, for each and every one of you must find yourselves this way. There's another poem I wrote. Sometimes it seems that life's a battle. Sometimes it seems it's one big war. Sometimes then I will wonder, how much longer? How much more? I don't know why it's so crazy, why it seems to have no aim. And that's the time I'll ask the question, where is the lesson in this pain? I see people hope tomorrow will be better than today. I see people hope that hoping somehow drive the pain away. I don't know why it's so crazy, why it seems to have no aim. And that's the time I'll ask the question, where is the lesson in this pain? I keep hoping love is real and not what it seems to be, a trap in which the lonely falter, a treasure box without a key. I don't know why it is so crazy, why it seems to have no aim, and that's the time I'll ask the question, where's the lesson in this pain? We just finished singing the song, Let It Be. One of those extraordinary songs that came to us in the 1960s in the Haight-Ashbury. And I know it may seem romantic. I go up on YouTube and I post these songs and I see somebody saying, I wish I'd been there during that time. I want to tell you I was there. Like most times of great significance, it wasn't easy. The old world was being ripped away in the face of almost impossible odds. I sat on my house on Haight Street in the summer of love, and parents would come up with pictures of their children crying, asking me if I had seen them. Yet there was a time of great light coming into a world of darkness. It is not over. It is still coming. It is still shining. I remember after that period I was in Berkeley, and 1971, I had a hippie natural foods restaurant, and somebody decided to ask me to come to Berkeley High School and give a talk on being a hippie. Nobody asked me before. Sort of collectively, they wish we'd gone away. But I walked in there and I found out I'd been set up. It was a class taught by some neophyte Marxist-Leninist who was teaching the high school kids at Berkeley about Marxism-Leninism. And I walked into it and I found out they were gunning for me. And I was set up. After 5 minutes, I politely said, I'm not going to talk anymore. And as I started to leave the room, this young man came up. He was a high school student. And he asked me a question I have never forgotten. He asked, why is there suffering? I didn't expect that question. And yet it is a question that underlies our lives on this planet. It underlies our incarnations. It underlies our purpose here. Part of that answer was to come to me in the next 1976, 77, 78, when I ran into the Course in Miracles. That lovely, lovely book. And it talked about the cause of our suffering. It said, you know, it's sort of simple. The cause of the suffering is our apparent separation from Source. A state of separation, though not true, will always engender pain and suffering. Though not true, you will experience it. And what happens is this. We will all return to our Source. We will all return home to the home we never left. Why? Because there's only so much pain we can take. Well, those words were to come true for me. I was already on the path back home, but I didn't know how much help I was going to need in the category of pain and adversity. I had learned by this time the power of thought. And I had created great wealth for myself. I turned to Betty one day and I said, you know, Betty, we shoot our TV shows, and after our show at the Temple, I put on my pinstripe wool gabardine suit, custom tailored, fine, fine suit. And I said, Betty, and I talk on money and economics, I said, you know, I don't understand why I bought this suit in 1976. I was a hippie. I never wore it as much as I do now when I give my talks on this show on money and finance. And Betty must have been channeling. She said, you bought it then because in the future when you were going to wear it, you wouldn't have the money to pay for such a fine suit. Once again, my faith in her words was reaffirmed. Well, years later, I was to pull my tarot card. And I wasn't in a tarot when I pulled it. I'd had the I Ching for years. It sufficed. But this was a wake-up call. I pulled that card at a Flowering to the Heart seminar here in Tucson with Lucien Zelli's house. And we were pulling our life card. And I pulled mine. It's the Hierophant. I asked Lucia, what is this card? She looks at me, she says, the Hierophant. Learning through adversity. When I look back on my life during that period of time, I look back on it, and at one point I said this: if my life could be described as a yoga, and now yoga is the word for path, my personal path would be the yoga of fear and loneliness. But I want to tell you that yoga, faithfully followed, works. And each one of us has our own path. Each one of us has our own path back home. And each one of you can describe that path to yourselves, for it is worn on the scars of your heart and in the love that is bringing you back home at this moment. 1983, my world was back together. Just come back from Europe, staying in suites again. I was using thought again to create my reality. It was working like a champ. And my friend calls me up from prison. You've heard the story before, some of you. He says, Darryl, I want you to get this book, this amazing book I just read called Thinking in Destiny. It's this old metaphysical book. So I found it and brought it home, and I opened it up, and it said, your use of thought to create your reality is an inappropriate use of your power at this time. Because at this time, much of your learning comes through adversity. And you're using this power to keep these needed lessons away from you. It was as if somebody shut off the exit sign and bolted the doors and lit the fire. And 1.5 years later, I was swept up in a federal bust and sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. I got there and I threw the I Ching. I said, can I use affirmations now? I said, go right ahead. Fine. I was where I was supposed to be, to learn what I had to learn. It was only this morning that I realized the significance of the 10 years that I've been sentenced and the 7 years that I served. Those are numerologically loaded numbers. And it was there I meditated far deeper than I ever had in my life. It was there I was in the monastery I never would have chosen on my own. So I'm going to read something Betty likes. It's from this book.
Is it Gypsy Girl?
It's a gypsy girl. From Light in a Dark Place. I wrote this. This is a collection of my writings during that time. I went to see a gypsy girl when I was 17. I heard she had a crystal ball in which tomorrow could be seen. I lived in California then, in a suburb way too small for what was about to happen. The 60s, if you recall. She had a scarf wrapped down her head. Her fingers were covered with rings. A golden circle pierced her nose. And her trailer was filled with things that a boy such as I would never see in a nice suburban house. Crosses, incense, and pentagrams were next to chairs and couch. Well, the gypsy girl, she looked at me, that eyes that seemed to know that my thoughts were on her blouse so full that hung so very low. And with a smile, she sat me down in front of her crystal ball. She said she was born in Romania. She had a gift that could tell me all. Her price, she said, was 25 bucks, which was more than I possessed. But she took the 15 that was in my hand and said I could owe the rest. Now, dear sir, do you really want me your fortune to tell? For oftentimes it's best left alone for you never know how well you can handle a future that will surely be at odds with what you believe. So please be certain before we proceed the truth you're willing to receive. Well, all I wanted to know back then if a dentist I would be. Orthodontist seemed the perfect choice for a person such as me. She closed her eyes and I wondered what was passing through her mind. Next she stared right through my head, seeing what she could find. She said, I know you're young and filled with hopes that I know will never be. But you've paid my price and come to me with a request for you to see. For unknown reasons I can only see your life till 44. But for 15 down and 10 bucks owed, you could hardly hope for more. At 44, you'll be folding clothes inside a prison laundry. For a man you'll know as Big Bird, and there's something else I see. Before that job in prison too, you'll work as a garbage man, taking care of people's trash and dumping out their cans. But you'll have traveled much of the world by then, seen Paris, Rome, Beijing. You'll have slept in places such as Marrakesh and stayed in Medellin. But your greatest journey will be an inward one, to the center of your very soul. You'll discover the truths you've always sought, and you'll learn to rock and roll. She smiled at me, took my hands in hers, and her hands were oh so hot. She said, let tomorrow come whene'er it will, and accept what can't be bought. She laughed when she saw me hesitate, and said that she already knew I wasn't yet ready for a gypsy girl's love, and the freedom I wanted then too. It's been a while since I thought of her that day and what she said, because it's all come true, every word of it. And it seems that I've been led on a journey far greater than a dentist chair and a home in a condo or two. And I wait for the rest to unfold when it will, and for that freedom the gypsy girl knew. That song, Barbara, that we just sang, the first song, The Rose, the second song, Let It Be, I could not have thought of two more appropriate songs for the talk I was giving today. 2 weeks ago, Reverend Yazzie Contractor read something from the Blue Books, the Alice A. Bailey books, Discipleship in the New Age, and it talked about pain. I would like to share it with you. As soon as he said it, I knew I was going to use it. Pain is that upward struggle through matter which lands the man at the feet of the locust. Pain is the burning in the furnace in order to finally know the coolness of the water of life. Pain is the journeying into the far country, resulting in the welcome to the Father's home. Pain is the illusion of the Father's disowning, which drives the prodigal straight to the Father's heart. Pain is a cross of utter loss that renders back the riches of the eternal bounty. Pain is the whip that drives the struggling builder to carry to utter perfection the building of the temple. The uses of pain are many, and they lead the human soul out of darkness into light, out of bondage into liberation, out of agony into peace. That peace, that light, and that liberation within the ordered harmony of the cosmos are for all the sons of men and women. Each of us is on a journey of apparent separation, on our way home to the home we have never left. Leonard Cohen said this about the inevitability of our return home. To every heart, love will come, but as a refugee. The words that we just sang to the rose, they're so powerful. So, so, so powerful. And for those who these words are true, I want to read another poem. I didn't write its lyrics because I think it's most pertinent. When the night has been too lonely and the road has been too long, and you think that love is only for the lucky and the strong, just remember in the winter, far beneath the bitter snows, lies the seed that with the sun's love in the spring becomes the rose. There was a moment 1979, 1980, I found myself in China. I'd been reading the Course in Miracles, and I remember exactly where it was because of what happened to me. I was on the 28th floor of the Intercontinental Hotel in Tokyo, and I was reading the text of the Course. And it said, if you are not happy because of who you are, it is because you have truly not asked to be happy. Now, I thought everybody wants to be happy. But the Course had already answered questions I had never asked. And so I continued reading. And it said, you might want to ask yourself the question of why you have never asked to be happy, truly. I had nothing to do. I was on the 28th floor. Room service was very expensive. I closed the book in my lap, and I said to myself, why haven't I asked to be happy? And the answer was immediate and ripped through me like the truth through darkness. You are afraid of dying. And I knew it wasn't physical death. I knew it was a death of my ego, myself that thought it was what it was. And that if I was truly happy, that if I did truly walk through the glorious halls and find myself home, I might disappear, I might die, I might not be there. And the realization of that thought shook me. This is 1971, 81. I had started my journey. I read the Bible twice in high school looking for the truth. I had gone through all these paths. And the realization that if the door were simply right there with the doorknob on it, I'd be pounding at that wall very hard trying to get out. I'd be praying to God to lift me up. But I would not walk to that door and open it. And the realization of that shook me to my core. I don't know what I did in China for the next 2 weeks. I was there on business. But I knew I was really shaken. But God loves all of us. And He gave me a tape that I carried with myself. It was a tape by the Grateful Dead. Jerry Garcia. And he was singing the song, The Wheel. I'd like to read it to you. For those of you who are still on a journey, as I am. Because sometimes it gets real hard. The wheel is turning and you can't slow down. You can't let go and you can't hold on. You can't go back and you can't stand still. If the thunder don't get you, then the lightning will. Won't you try just a little bit harder? Couldn't you try just a little bit more? Won't you try just a little bit harder? Couldn't you try just a little bit more? Round, round, robin, round, round. Got to get back to where you belong. A little bit harder, just a little bit more. A little bit further than you've gone before. The wheel is turning, you can't slow down. You can't let go and you can't hold on. You can't go back and you can't stand still. If the thunder don't get you, then the lightning will. Small wheel turned by the fire and rod. Big wheel turned by the grace of God. Every time that wheel turns round, bound to cover just a little more ground. The wheel is turning, you can't slow down. You can't let go and you can't hold on. You can't go back and you can't stand still. If the thunder don't get you, then the lightning will. Won't you try just a little bit harder? Couldn't you try just a little bit more? Won't you try just a little bit harder? Couldn't you try just a little bit more? And those words gave me the strength to keep on, keeping on. I got out of prison. I was in the halfway house in San Francisco. I met this guy there. He was on his way in. I think he had almost a 20-year sentence. And something moved me to read to him The Gypsy and the Journey Girl. It wasn't in a book, but I had it on me. And I read him that poem. And he looked at me and he said, "It isn't finished. There's more." And I wrote that night 6 verses. It all turned out to the Gypsy Girl. It all turned out like you said it would. Medellin and Marrakesh, Big Bird and the laundry job, and there's more I can't confess. But you didn't tell me of the sorrows, of the partings and my tears. You didn't tell me of the journey through all my hidden fears. She smiled at me at my heartfelt words and said she'd known that then, that when I'd come back in the future, that I'd still owe her the 10. That if I paid, she would have told me all of what there was to hear. But she knew back then I'd survive it all. and then she drew me near. I smelled the flowers in her hair. Her blouse lay on the floor. We kissed and laughed and did the things that make you wish for more. And now I'm free as the gypsy girl. And my heart is filled with love for that which made this journey so different than what it was. We are eternal lights, passing through temporal darkness. We cannot be harmed. We are love itself. Namaste. Amen.